Guys, as we had discussed on this podcast, the drink of the summer was Gator wine. And in the spring, we discussed Borgs, or Blackout Rage Gallons, which was the spring drink of college idiots. And now I have for you the drink of winter.
I'm kind of worried about what you're going to say next.
Well, the weather's getting colder, nice crisp mornings. It's time to curl up by the fire with a glass of red wine. But sometimes you want something different, like a martini. So I give you the red wine martini, the rar-tini, the martini rosso.
I think that's trademarked. And also, that sounds like a headache in a glass. Well, is it chilled? Because if it's got red wine and it's chilled, I'll try it.
Don't worry, Ruby, it's chilled. You just shake some red wine, gin, simple syrup, and lemon juice with ice, and then strain it into a chilled cocktail glass. Garnish it with a lemon, and voila. I know I'm acting excited about this, but I'm actually more of a dirty martini guy, so this seems a little sweet for me.
That's right. You're a dirty martini with 3 olives, if I remember correctly, Nick. You like to kind of have a little appetizer with your drink in your drink.
Oh, precisely. There's actually a restaurant here in Portland, Maine, that does a double dirty martini with olive juice and oyster juice, and then it's garnished with an oyster. So, would you rather
Oh.
have that or a red wine martini?
I'm gonna go with a red wine martini because I don't even know what oyster juice is. And is it like a raw oyster on a toothpick that it's like how is that garnished? I
Oh,
anyway.
they put the shell right over the top of the glass. It's great.
Okay. Okay. I think everyone has gone insane except for me because I just like my wine in a glass and that is it. Please and thank you.
Ooh.
Boring. Dock workers struck and some wine got stuck. Non-alcoholic champagne is here and it is a little pricey. Oregon's governor chooses chip farms over grape farms, and come on over because it's October. Those are this week's stories on The Four Top, your favorite wine news podcast. I am Catherine Cole, your host, joined by Nick Toole and Ruby Welkovich. And we're also joined by very special guest, Karen MacNeil, who will tell us a little bit about Come Over October.
So, if you've been wondering where your wine delivery is, it may be stuck on a ship off one of the 14 prominent ports from Maine all the way down to Texas that were shut down last week by a dock workers strike.
That's right. International Longshoremen's Association union members walked off the job and onto the picket lines last Tuesday, causing chaos. This group of dock workers moves more than half of U.S. container imports, and that, of course, includes wine. Yes, according to the American Farm Bureau, 80% of imported beer, wine, whiskey, and scotch arrives to the U.S. in containers at the East and Gulf Coast ports, controlled by the United States Maritime Alliance, also known as USMX, that were shut down.
Now, these dock workers saw that some ocean carriers had seen profits soar by 800% in the past few years, and they wanted their share of that growth. They negotiated hard, and the damage the strike could have done to the U.S. economy forced the hand of the ocean carriers and port operators.
Yeah, and listeners, if you are interested in learning more about this, I recommend checking out the podcast Slate Money to get the full story. I loved the conversation between host Felix Salmon, who's actually a past Four Top guest, along with his co-hosts Emily Peck and Elizabeth Spires, and they talk about a number of interesting aspects to this strike. Right. The strike highlighted an interesting balancing act between the union's desire for safer working conditions and a distrust of automation, which can make jobs safer but also cost union jobs. We're likely to see that same tension in vineyards in the coming years.
And there was a whole side story about the leader of the dock workers having mafia ties, which at this point just seems like a cliche.
Yeah. There was a little detail about a body in the trunk of a car, but we don't need to get into that. Also a cliche. Anyway, under pressure from the Biden administration, USMX agreed to raise wages by 62% over 6 years. Because if the strike had been allowed to go on, consumers would definitely have seen higher prices and renewed inflation fears. Now, fear not, the strike is over, but wine and alcohol shipments, as well as other products, have been delayed. On the bright side, economists are saying that prices likely won't be affected. So, guys, I have a question for you. Would you pay $120 for a bottle of grape juice?
Okay, so normally no, but there were only 2 bottles of the coveted Kedem grape juice at my Rosh Hashanah dinner this year. I don't know if you've ever had it. But
Wait,
anyway.
No.
tell us about this. Stop. What is Kadem?
Okay. Kedem grape juice is a brand of grape juice that's very popular in the Jewish community, and it's loved by many. And
Mm.
for some reason, it was requested at our Rosh Hashanah dinner this year in Vermont, and only 2 bottles were brought, which was not enough for
Oh,
so
That's a
many
crime.
people.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm willing some of my family members might have paid the $120 to keep the bottle to themselves. But yeah, normally I don't think $120 for a bottle of grape juice is a good idea.
I guess I should clarify. This is more like Martinelli sparkling cider, so a little
Oh.
fancier than grape juice.
I was
What
about
do
to
you think,
say I
Nick?
don't really like grape juice very much. So no, my answer is no.
Well, I guess, Nick, you are not the target demographic for French Bloom, although maybe Ruby's family is. This is a non-alcoholic sparkling wine brand run by Rodolphe and Maggie Frerjean Tattinger. Yes, that is Tattinger as in the Champagne House. Rodolphe has actually been running his own Bubbles Maison. It's called Frère Jean Frère Champagne since 2005. And now he and his wife are making this non-alcoholic sparkling wine, and they have financial backing from Moet Hennessy. So it's been in the news this week. And this non-alcoholic sparkling wine is called French Bloom.
Okay, so it looks like French Bloom has no financial links to Champagne Taittinger, but according to the Telegraph, this 0% ABV biz may be ruffling family relations a little bit. Rodolphe's uncle recently told the Telegraph that he would never release an alcohol free wine under the family champagne brand, saying, "Alcohol is alcohol. When we go to alcohol, it's because we don't want to drink without alcohol. If you don't want to pray, don't go to church." That's an excellent quote.
Yikes. I don't know if I agree with that because I love that bars have non-alcoholic options for people who don't wanna drink. But anyway, I am looking at their socials because I'm curious about it. It's a really beautiful bottle. Their branding is on point.
Hmm.
And yeah, it looks like they are living the champagne lifestyle, but without any alcohol.
Are
I
you guys familiar with trypophobia?
Yeah.
What?
It's it's a fear of like tiny little holes.
Oh.
And if you look at the branding on these, it's nice branding, but if you zoom in closely, like behind the words French Bloom, it gives me that kind of heebie-jeebies feel that trypophobia causes.
Oh,
That is so
interesting.
funny.
Okay, now I'm looking at the label. Hold on, please hold. Okay, it looks like a tree or maybe roots or maybe a
Mhm.
coral reef,
Or
I
like
think,
yeast bloom.
or yeast bloom.
Or
Uh,
shattered glass. No, no, it's a tree.
it could be vine roots. I don't know. Interesting. Okay, so trypophobia, huh? So do
Yeah.
people who have this, are they afraid of champagne? Because it's all those tiny bubbles?
Um,
Okay, this says honeycombs, sea sponges, soap bubbles, so they probably can't drink champagne. This is terrible.
no, they can drink champagne. Oh my god, I don't think I technically have it, but I just looked it up and now it's showing all these examples of things you would hate, and I'm really getting grossed out.
It's really gross. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, I get it. I get it.
It really doesn't bother me.
Well, it sounds like Ruby, the branding is pretty good. It sounds like the family, there's a lot of drama. I've been watching The Serpent Queen, which is, I don't know if you guys have heard about this. It's a series about Catherine de Medici. It's fabulous. And I'm getting full on Protestants versus Catholics war vibes from this
okay.
Taittinger family
Mm.
argument over alcohol versus no alcohol. But yeah, so my only bone to pick with this brand, hey, I'm all for non-alcoholic wine if it brings more people into the wine world and the wine fold and talking about vineyards and growing. So my bone to pick with this is I'm looking at this $120 bottling and the description on the website just says crafted from organic French Chardonnay grapes. It doesn't say where they're from, doesn't say anything about the vineyards. I wanna know about the terroir. So, give me some more detail, convince me that this is really worth this much. But anyway, we will keep an eye on this, and Nick will get you a therapist because we're sorry about your condition.
I'm still a little grossed out.
So, listeners may remember that last week we had Maria Ponzi of Linfield University's Wine Studies program on as a guest. Well, this week I heard from Maria about something completely different, and I wanted to talk about it on the podcast because she alerted me and other members of the Oregon wine community about this, and I was a little concerned. So, let's talk about it. So, apparently, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek has a plan to bring 373 acres of prime Willamette Valley farmland into our urban growth boundary so that a semiconductor research facility can be built.
Yeah, under a 2023 state law known as SB4, a considerable amount of money was set aside to fund grants and loans for semiconductor and advanced manufacturing companies that were looking to acquire and develop land. But the controversial part of the bill is that it grants the governor unprecedented authority to set urban growth boundaries, which are the outer limits of where development can occur around Oregon cities.
The governor only has this authority until the end of this year, 2024, and this recent decision to snag almost 400 acres of farmland in Hillsboro, Oregon, is considered a threat by many farmers and wine growers.
Yeah, and that may not sound like much, 400 acres, but in the Willamette Valley, 400 acres is a lot of vineyard land. We have very
Hmm.
tiny vineyards here. So the law only allows the governor to take the land if it is the only way a semiconductor project can move forward. So activists and farmers are arguing that she is really exceeding her mandate here with this recent land grab.
Yeah, arguments against Governor Kotek's move note that there are over 10,000 acres of industrial land inside existing urban growth boundaries, and that hundreds of acres of farmland in Hillsborough have already been incorporated into the urban growth boundary.
Likewise, opponents are skeptical that 400 acres is even necessary and cite other similar semiconductor facilities that use far less space. Some also highlight the fact that the expansion of the urban growth boundary threatens Oregon's sustainability goals.
There are those in favor of the governor's move. Some landowners could see their property values increase substantially under the plan. And then Oregon has been a big player in the U.S. semiconductor industry for decades, but is at risk of losing that status to other states such as Texas and New York. So, with billions in funds available through the federal government's CHIPS Act, state politicians are hoping to keep businesses such as Intel interested in the state.
All right, Catherine, you're the Oregonian here, so what's your take?
Yeah, so Intel is obviously a big player in Oregon's economy, but as Maria Ponzi has pointed out, Intel got 8.5 billion in federal CHIPS Act dollars this year and 800 million in state property tax breaks over 5 years. And here in Oregon, we're really known and admired for our urban growth boundaries, which keep our state livable and beautiful. It's a little unclear because what's being proposed is a quote research facility. So it's not as easy as saying this is about ugly factories taking over farmland because I'm not entirely sure what this facility would be, but I will tell you that semiconductor plants are huge polluters. So if there will be fabrication happening there, chip fabrication uses a ton of energy and water. It typically emits a lot of toxic chemicals and greenhouse gases. I don't know where you want these things to be located, but you definitely don't want them near your vineyards and farms where your food is being grown. The technology has gotten better in recent years, but according to an interface study published in June, chip fab farms are still big environmental baddies. So, got to keep an eye on this one. Hey guys, do you know what month it is?
Well, I have heard from some friends that it's sober October.
Well, we have a special guest joining us who has a different perspective. So, Ruby, try this out on your friends. How about come over October?
Ooh, I think they would really like that.
Yeah, I like that too. So let's bring in the absolutely wonderful Karen MacNeil, author and wine expert, to tell us a little bit about Come Over October.
Hi, Karen. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the genesis of Come Over October?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ruby. I'm Karen MacNeil. I'm the author of The Wine Bible and the editor of the digital newsletter Wine Speed. And Come Over October began just a few months ago when, after watching the news about wine, I began to grow increasingly dismayed. And it seemed to me that something in the culture had shifted. I mean, wine in America had been growing and getting better and better for decades. And then all of a sudden, this spring, I felt like there was a big change. And Three things upset me. One was the narrative around wine had devolved to simply being a narrative about alcohol. And to me, wine is more than alcohol. Wine is threaded into a rich tapestry of history and culture and art and religion. It's way more than just alcohol. And second, I felt that not drinking wine had begun on social media to take on this sort of self righteous tone. And I thought that was really misplaced. And most important of all, as a researcher and as a journalist, I know that wine has played a positive role in society and culture for 9,000 years. For 9,000 years, it's brought people together. We have all had the experience of sitting down at a table with people we don't know, and after some wine, you leave as that person's friend. And that seemed to me to be categorically good. And I was upset that no one was telling that story. So one morning, walking the dog, it was early. I was muttering to myself, why isn't the wine industry telling this story? And I just sort of turned to myself and said, you're a word person. You should tell the story. And I began to conceive of an idea that was along the lines of what if every wine drinker in America for a whole month just invited a friend, a neighbor, a colleague, a family member over to share some wine, something that has been done for centuries. And it popped into my head because I am a writer and I like rhymes, Come Over October. And so Come Over October was born.
I love what you're saying, Karen. I love the cultural aspect and the sharing, the community. But how are you kind of walking the line? Because Come Over October, it's a contrast to Sober October. And obviously, Sober October is a very good idea for many people who are struggling with their drinking. It's a positive message as well. And how do you kind of strike that contrast while not making Come Over October sound like an invitation to just get drunk?
It's an important question. Let me say that that morning when I came up with the idea of Come Over October, I called Kimberly Charles and Gino Colangelo, two old friends who separately own their own communications companies. And I said, I've just had this idea. It's maybe a dumb idea, or I don't know, maybe it's good. What do you think? And they both said, ooh, this is a really good idea. And so the three of us formed a small company called Come Together, a community for wine. We are donating all of our time to both Come Together and its first annual campaign, Come Over October. As far as Sober October goes, Catherine, thank you for pointing that out. Sober October, however, to me is a medical initiative. And it's aimed at people who have a problem with alcohol. I'm empathic about that. I'm sorry that that's the case for some people. Come Over October is very different. It is not a medical campaign, it's a social campaign. And it is a campaign in honor of wine's historic legacy as a beverage that can bring us together. And it's certainly not about partying. You know, we say all the time, it would be great if on any given Saturday night in October, you just sat down with your spouse or your partner or the next door neighbor and shared some wine. It's about connection. And because it is about connection, in all honesty, I think it's one of the reasons the campaign has been so successful because it resonates whether you're 23 or 63. The idea of just inviting someone over and sharing some wine in person, face to face, talking, the joy of being together, that's an important part of life.
Thank you. I personally feel like this whole cultural or social conversation around it has been missing up until this point because we've been reporting on, the concerns around health for almost a year now. And this has been a piece that's been missing to the wine industry's response. So I personally appreciate that this conversation is being had.
And Nick, one of the interesting things to me is we've probably all asked, I'm sure that the Foretop has asked lots of people, what was, the singular wine that made you fall in love with wine? What was the greatest wine you ever drank, or some version of that? Everybody you ask that question to remembers who they were with. That
Right.
is an interesting psychological fact. Wine has had this ability to bring us together in ways that we could have never anticipated. It's an amazing capacity that wine has. And part of it is because we do share it. It's in a bottle. You don't drink it yourself. You share it with another person. And I suppose we've probably also all saved a bottle thinking, ooh, when XYZ comes over, that's when I'm going to open this, because you inherently internalize the idea that wine is about sharing and generosity and connection.
Speaking of the social aspect of it, I get to ask you the fun question, which is, how was it recording a video with the naked cowboy of Times Square?
We are friends now, boy. Me and the naked cowboy. We are, he did everything for my image. I want to tell you, I'm now a reformed woman. I thought about getting him a pair of, he wears that really tight, small underwear. I thought I really have to get him some underwear that says "Come over October."
Yeah.
I met him in Times Square last week. I don't know the guy, but he was singing, and I had my little "Come Over October" sign. I started dancing, and uh, he on the spot created a "Come Over October" song. So we had to catch that on video. Thanks for asking.
Well, I thought you both did a fantastic job. That was a fun video to watch.
Well, Karen MacNeil, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about the origins of Come Over October. We are excited all month to be drinking wine with our friends, and we will be toasting you and your co-founders. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nick, Ruby, Catherine. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. You guys, Instagram was popping off for us this week.
Oh, yeah, it was. This week's question of the week was pretty popular. We asked our followers if it would change the game for small wineries and retailers if the U.S. Postal Service started to ship alcohol. This has been proposed. There's some new legislation out there that's trying to make that a reality. And the folks on Instagram are psyched.
Yes, they are. We had a few dozen comments, but we picked out a few. So, Culture Wine Co. says, "Love this. Let's go, USPS. Hopefully, the WSWA keeps their grimy hands off this." So, not a fan of the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America.
Yeah, I should say not. CP Sayaka brings us a perspective from Europe. As an American vigneron living in Europe, I can ship my wine from Austria to France, Germany, or any EU country with the regional post. They even have special wine boxes with a flat fee.
Oh my gosh, I am so jealous of that. Well, Teru Saab is also a fan and says, moneymaker for USPS, better rates for wineries. Win win.
Not everyone is a fan of the idea. Al Alejandro 27 joked, "I don't trust USPS with my sock delivery across the state."
All right, let's end on a positive one. Lorraine's Selections says, huge win for us who are small but scrappy.
Well, if this law passes, you will hear all about it on the foretop. And look for our latest questions up on Instagram. I think we have one about wine and health. And maybe we'll ask this week, would you pay $120 for a bottle of non alcoholic sparkling wine? I want to know.
All right, it's time for this week's dessert course. Catherine, what do you have?
Well, I am just finishing up a kitchen remodel and living in dust and with loose wires and boxes everywhere. And as I kind of move back into my cupboards, getting rid of stuff, and I'm looking at my 12 different shapes of wine glasses and thinking, I only need one shape. What am I doing? This is dumb. So I'm reaching out to listeners with my dessert course because I think I'm going to write about this for Decanter. I'd love to hear listeners' thoughts. Do we really need all these different wine glass shapes? Can we just have one universal one? I mean, I feel like it scares consumers off when they think not only do I have to buy different styles of wine, but I have to have a different shaped glass for each style of wine. So I'm turning this over in my mind, and I would love to hear from you listeners. So send me a line, reach out via Instagram. Let me know your thoughts about wine glass shapes. Thanks. And hey, Nick and Ruby, what do you guys think about wine glass shapes?
2.
2?
2? Which 2?
2 you want in your house.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I'm
This is important.
maybe in the market for one of those, what is it called? The Josephina. What's that one called? The really expensive.
Josefina Hütte.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If any listener wants to send me one of
Cocoon.
those, a cocoon
Yes.
glass, I think they look cool.
Yeah, but you'll need a full set. And what are they? $100 a pop? So
A full set. I'm one lonely gal.
well, with that, this has been the Four Top Podcast. I am our executive producer, Catherine Cole.
I'm our producer, Nick Toole.
And I'm media and design manager Ruby Welkovich.
Keelan King is the composer and performer of our fabulous theme music. Please visit our website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us and listen to back episodes.
If you have not already subscribed to The Four Top on iTunes or Spotify or whatever platform, please do so, and please leave us a rating.
Yes, this is super important. Every rating feeds the algorithm and helps new listeners find the Four Top.
Well, from inside a chip fab farm in the Willamette Valley, this is Catherine signing out.
From a rainy Portland, Maine, where I'm currently researching how to get a Times Square ad for Mother's Day, this is Nick signing out.
And from the home of the Naked Cowboy in New York City, this is Ruby signing out. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.